Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And as I promised last week, I'm going to give a review of Backlash France because, oh my, it was such a good card. There's no way I cannot give a review. Honestly, actually, if it was a bad card, I'd still give a review. But no, this one was a spectacular card. So it's definitely one that needs to be talked about because when you know something good, speak of it. Don't just talk about negative, speak of the good things because we're going to have some negative on the show as well. Unfortunately, with some current events that have been happening in the wrestling news concerning a very, very famous wrestler who apparently thinks that they are the most important person on God's green earth. But before I start any of that, I'm going to go ahead and get all the contact information and all my shout outs and everything out of the way. I want to go ahead and knock them out first. If you want to email the show and let me know what you think about me, give me an editorial. Email the show, armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find the show on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. Just do a search for Armchair Booking Podcast. If you go to Twitter X @Booking Armchair, that's where you find it. Somebody squatted on Armchair Booking even before I made the podcast. I'm still trying to figure out how that happened. Very strange, but at Booking Armchair. You can also find the show on YouTube. Those of you already watching YouTube, well, you're sitting there thinking, well, duh. But you can find the show on YouTube. In fact, if you're on YouTube, hit the like, share, subscribe button. In fact, share it with your friends because I'm really trying to grow the listener base there or viewer base there. And um, and I'm also on all the audio platforms. You know, I'm not planning on leaving audio anytime soon. I like to stay audio because I do realize there are some people who may listen to audio. They listen when they're out driving, when they're on the road, and that's cool. I mean, any way that I can actually get out to an audience, I'm all for it. But I would still like to grow the subscriber count on both audio and YouTube. And speaking of audio, if you give the show a 5-star rating and a review, if your platform allows that, I will actually read the review on the air. If you give the show a rating, but you're not able to give a review because the platform you use doesn't allow that, yeah, I get it. I mean, because everybody has platforms they prefer. I would never tell anybody, hey, you need to switch off so you can give me a review. I would never do that. But the ratings help regardless. But just send a screenshot of the rating along with your review to armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com and I will read it on the air. If you want me to leave your name out of it, I will. I respect everybody's privacy. I'll just read the review. And I actually have merch. There is merch for the show. And you just go to tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. And you can actually find all the merch, including phone cases like this one right here. Speaking of which, I need a new one, man. I've had this one for a few years and I've really done some damage to it. But you can find t-shirts, you can find pillowcases, you can find pillows, you can find laptop cases, you can find stickers, you can find coffee mugs. They don't have the tumblers anymore, which makes me sad because the tumblers are actually kind of cool. But you can, oh man, there's all sorts of things on there, and actually a few different designs. And those are my own design. Actually, my wife helped me design it, and some of them I inverted the colors, and it's actually pretty cool. And so go check that out. And last but not least, I got quite a few shout outs I want to give because one of my new shows that, the last guest actually I had on the show, and it was Duke from Duke Loves Wrestling. I got to give his show a shout out. My dude's been busy lately. He's been putting out episode upon episode upon episode. In fact, there's one in the hopper right now that I'm going to be listening to that just popped into my own. I prefer Apple Podcasts. It just came up in the queue for that. So definitely we'll listen to that one. Always got to shout out Ted. Ted's Takes on Wrestling. Go check his show out. He's on video right now, and he doesn't do social media. He said maybe he will again in the future. We'll see. But you got to go to Ted's Takes on Wrestling on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube and audio, both. BC Hunter from Wrestling with the Truth, Wrestling with the 80s. He has been putting out more audio lately and video as well. Either way, he does great. He's just an awesome dude, and he and I have already in talks about me going on his show here in a few weeks once I'm back back in pocket, because I'm going to be out of pocket here, and I'll let you discuss that as well. The Finisher Wrestling Podcast, Mike DeMira, Bink, and the man with many names. Love their show. Great wrestling analysis. And, we're definitely going to be running it back as well, because yeah, I just love anytime I can actually talk with those guys. I mean, it is always an absolute pleasure. We've always had a good time anytime we've recorded together, whether it be on their show, whether it be on this show. We always have fun, and we all just love wrestling. The Dad World Order. These guys, I mean, their show is still kicking strong. I haven't been able to see them in person lately because I haven't been able to make it to many NWF shows, but they don't just go to the Northern Wrestling Federation shows. I mean, they go all over the place. In fact, I want to say, I think they just announced they've already got their tickets for SummerSlam. SummerSlam is happening in Cleveland. Cleveland's only 4 hours away from here. They've got their tickets. This actually be the second year in a row that they've attended SummerSlam live. I already know I won't be because it's on the same day as my wife's birthday, and I like sleeping indoors. And I'm pretty sure if I were to go to SummerSlam on her birthday, she would change the locks while I'm gone. Not that she does not like wrestling, well, she would go to something like that. Not that, but it's her birthday. So you gotta make priorities. My buddy Justin at TNC Sports Talk, to throw in with Justin. Always gotta shout him out. Justin is a good dude. We have a lot of discussions, not just on here, but my other podcast as well, which I will get to. Kenny Cummings is another dude that I see him at actually quite a few events. I've seen him at NWF shows. In fact, that's where I met him, was at an NWF show. And I've also met him at Fan Fest, which apparently I'm no longer allowed to go to. Not because of my wife, but for other reasons. But I ran into him at, I believe it was a Spot Monkey promotion show around Cincinnati. But I know he hits all the different wrestling things all over the place. And he's coming out of Lexington. So the man stays busy, and he has a job, a full-time job. So I don't see how. I'm like, dude, when do you sleep? But he's another good dude. Gotta check him out. And also, always one of my best friends in the world, Delicious Dwaylen Davis. Of course, we know he is still listed as a co-host of the show for a reason. Even though he's on a hiatus, he's always going to be the co-host, the full-time co-host. Yes, I have guest co-hosts, but even my guest co-hosts have said, look, this is Dwaylen's spot. They're like, this is Dwaylen's spot. They don't, they know that Dwaylen is co-host, and they respect that. But they've even said, even if all of a sudden he wasn't the co-host for some reason, God forbid, they would not jump in. They're like, no, I'm not going to follow Dwaylen. I mean, they're like, no, because I've always called Dwaylen the walking, talking wrestling encyclopedia. And not just that, just Dwaylen is just one of the best human beings, I mean, on the face of the planet. That's why he and I have been such close friends now for, 3+ decades. Yeah, it's been a long time, but go check out his podcast. He hasn't been able to record much in his lately either. It's been a long time for him, but I mean, he's been just very busy. We always say family comes first. And sometimes when it rains, it pours. You always got to make sure you're taking care of your family, including his newborn son, who, I don't know if anybody out there, if you have kids of your own, at the very beginning, when the kid's born, they look like a little old man. And then within a couple months, all of a sudden you'll see it's almost like forms and shapes start taking place. And Dwaylen's son, his baby son, is an absolute clone of Dwaylen. It's funny. I mean, you look at him, you're like, oh, good Lord. It's, Dwaylen without the beard. I haven't seen that in a very long time. And I also want to give, I guess it's a shout out to me, my non-wrestling podcast, the Cubicle Chat, because I've been recording on that 4 or 5 days a week here for the past few months while I'm still job hunting. But I mean, I try to keep that interesting. My my listener base there has actually grown, and I've been happy about that. I've been having a lot of feedback on the different topics that I cover, including Military Mondays, TV and Movie Tuesday, Musical Wednesdays, Sporty Thursdays, or Sport and Leisure Thursdays, and Fridays/Saturdays. Sometimes I'm not able to record on Friday because Friday, just a lot of things are going on Friday. And so a lot of times I have to push it off till Saturday morning before everybody wakes up and gets out of bed. But I'm about to do that, and I've been having people a lot of feedback, and I've actually had friends, who say, "Hey, I want to come on the show," and I've got other people um, that say, "Hey, they want to come on the show." But I said, "Hey, let's talk in a couple weeks," because, like I said, I'm going to be out of pocket next week. So, on to Backlash France. That's what they're calling now. It's just Backlash France. They're not calling it WrestleMania Backlash because, to be honest with you, that was one of the most confusing names in the history of ever. It's like, why, you're just capitalizing on the WrestleMania name? No, it's not a backlash to WrestleMania. Of course, I mean, any pay per view or PLE that follows WrestleMania, it's going to be, part of the stories, part of the matches are going to be coming off of WrestleMania in some way, shape, or form. I mean, maybe not all of them, but you will have some of them. Let's say go backlash, ooh, revenge, and anyway, um, the first match, and it was Randy Owens, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, RKO, KO, and RKO. It's the Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, and Tama Tonga. And of course, I mean, they start fighting before the bell even rings. I mean, they're out there because this was a grudge match. It was not advertised as a grudge match. You don't really see those advertised anymore because some people nowadays, like, apparently just don't get it. What's a grudge match? I mean, it just means they're hating each other. It means it's going to be more brutal. It's not going to be a lot of scientific moves, arm drags, arm bars, headlocks. I mean, no, it's going to be a lot of punches, kicks, knees to the head, things like that, because, I mean, it's going to be a fight. Well, they got to fighting so much. Officials came out and said, "Hey, you want to fight so much? Fine. This is now basically anything goes. This is now a street fight. Have at it." And they did. Oh my. It was an absolute slugfest. It was brutal, which is exactly what I was wanting, and exactly what I think everybody was wanting. And I enjoyed it. I think everybody enjoyed it. So the official time was 19 minutes 25 seconds. However, with the punches thrown beforehand and then some of the aftermath, I mean, it was probably closer to 30 minutes if you include everything. Gotta take a swig real quick. But the match itself, I mean, it was brutal. And I was glad. I mean, you had um more more moves that probably would not have been allowed under the last regime before Paul Levesque finally took over. Glad to see that. I'll be honest with you, I do get tired of table spots. Um, and to me, you're just ruining a good table. But after a while, those get old, and I'm going to be discussing that as well. But I mean, for this kind of match, for a straight fight, you expect it in a way. I just get tired of it. But hitting each other's stuff, throwing each other to the barricades, doing the moves on the commentator's desk, which, by the way, you had the Americans and you had the French commentators. Apparently, the two guys also who were the French commentators, they're like loved over in France. They're the main WWE commentators um for them, like the French commentators, and the French crowd, just the audience just loves them. And of course, it ended with interference from Tongaloa. It was not Jacob Fatu, who everybody expected Jacob Fatu, and all of a sudden Tongaloa, who was literally with New Japan, I believe it was New Japan, just like a week before. He didn't have like a last match. They didn't say anything about his contract expiring. It was just he just left. Maybe that was on purpose. So this was a huge surprise, which is actually something else I am liking how WWE they have been doing that. They've been keeping these surprise appearances basically off the internet. And yeah, so he shows up Tongaloa, who is the brother of Tama Tonga, and they are both sons of Haku or Ming or King Tonga, a man who once got me in a chokehold so we could actually take a picture. And I have proof he had me in a chokehold, along with the barbarian was just pointing. He wasn't going to help me. But the bloodline basically is growing. Now Solo Sikoa, you gotta think Solo Sikoa's not even been in the bloodline, what, a year? And because I think he joined in what Clash of the Castle, and now all of a sudden he's the man in charge. He's the HMFIC. Come on, and yeah, so now the bloodline though it's still growing and it's still looking tough because in fact I dare say it actually, as far as just toughness, I'm not saying Roman Reigns wasn't tough. I'm not saying that Jimmy and Jay aren't tough, but these three right now, they're younger and it seems like they're more vicious and they're more bloodthirsty. Uh, is it the strongest generation? Definitely the most, the wildest. So we'll have to see where it kind of goes from here. Um, Next match, the triple threat match for the WWE Women's Championship. Um, is it the Women's Championship or is it whatever Bailey's title is? Yeah, the WWE Women's Championship. Bailey, Naomi, and Tiffany Stratton. Another good match. And of course, it's going to be a good match. Because I mean, you look who's in there. Because Tiffany Stratton, man, she is she is on her way. She really is. She looks good in the ring. She's very athletic, and there were a couple of times you could kind of see, not I don't want to say inexperience. Maybe it was nerves, but a couple things that they weren't botchy, but they were kind of sloppy a little bit. But the match itself was still good. Bailey did go over. I think I did call Tiffany Stratton to win this, but it was a case of she pinned Naomi because they've been kind of putting her over Naomi. But no, it was Bailey pinning Naomi on a reverse of Naomi's move. And she got her, it was like a reverse crucifix type looking thing. She got her clean 1, 2, 3 right there in the middle of the ring. And so I was a little surprised, but Naomi shook her hand afterwards. They had a big old hug because they're good friends. And this is one of the things where Bailey, even when she first won her title, she said her first defense was going to be against her good friend Naomi. If you've been watching wrestling long enough, you kind of know where this is going to be leading. Naomi's going to turn her down the road because Naomi is a former world champion herself. She's going to want that title back. I mean, that's one of the things. It's like once you've had a taste of it, you want to keep it. And she's going to want the title back. And she is probably going to turn on Bailey. I don't see Bailey turning heel again anytime soon just because they just made her a face. And she is very, very over as a face. I don't see her bringing back the huggers. I don't see her bringing back the Bailey buddies, especially since she took a pickaxe to them. So unless they found more, they went to a car dealership and just kind of borrowed theirs. I don't see her bringing back the Bailey buddies. But I can see Naomi churning a little bit down the road. And Tiffany Stratton's already, keeping herself in the title picture because I mean she's going to be an impact player, no doubt. And right now, Bailey and Naomi are already at the top, and we knew with those two it was going to be a good match already. You throw the newcomer Tiffany Stratton in there, who is very athletic, and it certainly didn't take anything away from the match having her in there. But like I said, I was a little surprised at the ending. Honestly, I shouldn't have been. That was my bad. And I'm adult enough to admit it. So, Damian Priest. Speaking of turning, Damian Priest over Jey Uso for the world title or whatever they're calling now, the one that's on Raw. One of the coolest things was Jay playing with the crowd during his entrance. And I will be making some comments about the crowd because, oh my, this was one of the best crowds I have ever seen on any kind of show, whether it be live, whether it be on a pay-per-view showing, anything. I mean, this crowd was, oh my Lord, just off the charts crazy. And I mean that in a good way. So coming out of this match, Damian won. This was one that Dwayne actually texted me before. I'd already watched it, so I didn't want to tell him the actual results, but he had texted me and he said, "Hey, the smart move is to put Jay over Damian, put the title on Jay." We actually didn't get a chance, obviously, to really debate that because it's Rare that Joel and I disagree when it comes to the matches and things like that. But this one, I was going to disagree with him and say, no, they're not going to take it off Damian just yet. And I don't think they're going to give Jay a singles run. They're going to reunite Jay and Jimmy. This is my thought because everybody loves the Usos. Um, whether it was like the Hawaiian shirt, shorts, pant, whatever they were doing, the kind of weird um dancing and kind of playing up, good guys, and or it was when they went kind of straight, which I think that is more their personalities because it um they're very, very blunt and in your face, and they were so, man, they were so good. That's why honestly I didn't want to see them splitting up because they are such a good team, and because they're twins, they know the moves. I mean, and they put on great tag matches. They've held the titles, and um, I want to see them back together because of that. Because not only that, but yeah, their match at WrestleMania. I mean, yeah, it was going to be a good match, but it didn't really live up to the hype. And not only that, but I mean, you compare it to every other match in the card. Well, like I said, not that it was a bad match, but they're better as a team. This is a case of where you have the two guys who are great tag wrestlers and a very natural tag team, and all of a sudden you split them apart. There's some wrestlers better as tags, some are better as singles, and these two are better as a tag team. But the big story of the match though is Damian Priest telling Judgment Day to not interfere. And then even after the match, when they came in and he won, he actually won the match clean. I mean, it was a clean pin over Jay right there in the ring, and he did not. There was no interference. I mean, I know they tried, but Jay had actually, he super kicked the crap out of everybody as soon as they jumped up in the ring. But bam! I mean, he was taking care of it. But that's not what cost him the match. I mean, it was a clean. I mean, it was what they're calling the South of Heaven move. Um, and that yeah, the move, you know what it is. And he pinned him clean, and then they jumped in, they started stomping on Jay, and he threw him off. He's like, "No, I told you to get out." And so that's kind of a big thing. Damian Priest, I mean, it looks like he's probably going to be turning face because anytime you're saying "don't interfere with me," you're telling your faction, get away, and they're the ones, pulling kind of underhanded tactics. He's going to be the one to turn face. And I think it'd be a good move. Damian Priest is one he definitely deserves this world title that he's holding because Damian Priest is very, very good. I like watching him in the ring. And speaking of the South of Heaven move, I actually heard a different podcast. Um, I believe it was Nerdcast Empire. Yep, they were actually talking about this, and they had mentioned because Damian Priest, I mean, he is a metalhead. I mean, you can just look at him and say, "Oh yeah, he's a metal guy." But they said, well, maybe he could license some Slayer songs to come in and to the ring with. And I'm thinking, well, he can't really do South of Heaven because that's the song Edge came to the ring with at WrestleMania 39 against Finn Balor. So it wouldn't make any sense to bring it back to be Damian Priest music just because they've already used it kind of against the bloodline. You know, um, but I mean, there are other Slayer songs. Um, and they actually did not say the song South of Heaven specifically. I think they may have mentioned Raining Blood. Um, I can think of a lot of Slayer songs. I don't know if Raining Blood, and that's just really because the entrance of it just takes way too long. But they would have to start it like at the that part. If you don't know the song, go look it up. I know not everybody's a Slayer fan. Sorry, but yeah, definitely I see Damien breaking off from Bloodline, and with Rhea Ripley out, it's going to leave Finn Balor as the one kind of in charge of JD McDonough and Dominic. Dominic's not going to be in charge. He's Dominic's and the fans hate him. And not like go away heat either. I mean, they just love to boo him. But next one, it's kind of funny. I said, we have a singles who should be back in a tag because the tag team was that good. But right now, I'm going to talk about a tag team that really should go back to being singles. The Kabuki Warriors, they actually lost the women's tag team titles to Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. And found out actually within the past day, Asuka's injured. She was supposed to be in the Queen of the Ring tournament, but she was injured. So Dakota Kai actually replaced her. And, now they have not actually said the nature of the injury. They just said she's injured. She's going to be out. So was she injured before the match? Did she get injured during the match? If she was injured before, is that the reason they all of a sudden put the titles on a team that's been a team for all of 10 minutes before they got this title shot? I'm not a fan of, hey, we establish a team and the very first match is a title shot. I'm just not a fan of that. Now I'm not saying that they're not a good team, but Bianca and Jade, they don't actually have a team name. When they come to the ring, they're coming in separate. And yes, they are now the tag team champions. And the match itself, well, I mean, it was good. They got to show off their moves, their signature moves, the finishing moves. They got to show off their moves, and they won. After Bianca got her KOD, Jade had already done her finishing move, and then so they got it. And Jade and Bianca, I mean, they are very tough, legitimate, athletic women who are going to put on a good match. Period. Didn't matter who they're in there with. But I just don't see them staying together as a team. And maybe this is part of the plan. I'd say this team is going to last 6 months, maybe at the most. Well, I'll say about 6 months, anywhere from 6 to 9 months. Actually, I'll just throw it out there right now. And look for them to break up. They're going to lose the titles, and then they're going to break up, and then they're going to have a match with each other at the Rumble, and then maybe again at next year's WrestleMania, because that is a money match. If you don't think Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair squaring off is a money match, I don't know if there's any hope for you. Straight up. And those of you watching on YouTube, I don't know if there's any hope for the quality of this camera. Like I said, I have to get a new actual external webcam because the other one just fizzled out. Honestly, I'll be honest. I got it off Temu. Sometimes you can get good stuff off there. Sometimes, it's kind of, get what you pay for it type of thing. But that camera actually lasted a while and actually was pretty decent quality. Last match, championship match, the undisputed championship match, Cody Rhodes against AJ Styles. And this is one everybody's been looking forward to. A lot of build up to this match. Love the build up to this match. They, of course, they didn't mention, and they're not going to, they didn't mention AJ defending the NWA title against Dusty Rhodes, Cody's dad, in TNA. But they talked all about this and all the build up to it, and AJ saying, everybody says I'm old. You forget AJ Styles is in his mid-40s because he does not perform like he's in his mid-40s. But the match itself was great. The crowd was really, really into it. And this was actually some of the more funny things because just this French crowd. I mean, I'll say the European crowds, they were going crazy, and they appreciated both Cody and AJ, the moves they were doing, because they had a lot of lockups, they had a lot of reversals, they had a lot of the aerial type stuff, the stuff that would get a crowd on their feet, besides just punching and kicking. But they were doing great. And the match itself was almost half an hour long. Yeah, it was 27 minutes, 20 seconds long. And of course, Cody won. He hit the Cody cutter off the top, and then he hit the crossroads. Boom, there's the win. I don't think this will be the last time they go against each other. I don't think AJ is going to walk out a champion, not the world champion anyway, but not this title. But this was a great match, period, as it should have been. Look at the two guys in there. And I'll say all the matches were good. Some were great. This was probably the best match on there to me anyway. I mean, it was just fun to watch. Now, this says something about a wrestling card. The when the biggest story coming out of this, that well, and I say what everybody was talking about the most was the crowd itself, and not in a bad way. The crowd, I mean, you could feel it even sitting, a third of the way across the world. The crowd was just putting so much energy into the matches, and you could see how the wrestlers themselves are responding to that. Even like before the matches, of course, they loved Kevin Owens because Kevin Owens is going in there, he's grabbing a microphone and he's speaking French. French is his first language. He grew up in Montreal, and they were loving Kevin Owens, and they were appreciating all the moves. They were doing chants the entire event, and even during the match I was just talking about, AJ and Cody. Of course, AJ is the phenomenal AJ Styles. Every time AJ did something, now, and I've also heard some say, well, the commentators, when they were hearing the commentators, something about them being phenomenal. They weren't hearing the commentators. Are you serious? They were part of the loud crowd. They didn't hear anything the commentators were saying. No, they was just AJ doing something, and they were singing something, and you could listen. You're thinking, okay, I mean, because I don't speak French, but I could tell they were singing the same thing every time. Turns out it's actually part of a song that was really popular that was actually for a soccer team or football back some years back. It said he's just phenomenal, or yes, he's phenomenal, something like that. And that's what they were doing every time AJ did something. Now remember, AJ's supposed to be the heel, but yet they were still doing that. And every time he did something great, they were chanting it. Something else they were chanting the entire night. Every time there was a 2 count, or as the way Simon Miller, What Cultural Wrestling says, the 1-2 ooh. Every time they had that, the crowd was saying Supplementu. And I heard the do, and I'm like, are they saying it's just two? And sure enough, because I think simplement, okay, that sounds like it could be simply, and then do is two, the number two. And that's what they were saying, just a 2 count. And I guess, when I was saying about the French announce team earlier, this is what they, I guess, do anytime they're doing, oh, simplement do. And so the crowd was just repeating it. And even it did not matter how many times you heard it, it never got old. Not one time did it get old. And this is actually very typical at European sports events. If you've ever watched one, if you've ever been to one, the crowd is chanting the entire event. Well, at least at the football matches, the soccer matches. They chant the entire time. And it's pretty wild. I mean, it's pretty cool to experience that. And so they had, you could feel that going through the TV. And this crowd, they actually announced, and I'll have to look at the attendance, but they said this was the largest indoor arena crowd in WWE history. I mean, seriously. And there was 11,628 people, their largest indoor arena crowd ever. Which kind of surprised me because it seems like a low number, but then again, arenas aren't usually aren't designed to hold that many, you know. But that I mean, when everybody's talking about the crowd. I saw people post on Facebook going, "Oh my God, this crowd is amazing. I've never heard a crowd like that." And sometimes, I mean, I wish, I don't think you'll ever see that with an American crowd. It's just not our nature. Um, because if you started chanting the entire time, something like that, and the entire crowd was doing it, you'd have somebody there going, "Why don't y'all stop?" Um, I'm not really a chanter. I'm not. Um, and that's just me. I mean, I can, I have done chants with people, but I'm just not the one to get into it. And I think that's because of the chants we always hear at American wrestling events. And this is actually something that Dwaylen and I were actually texting back and forth, and because it's actually been brought up, and now I'm going to go into kind of my opinionated editorial type bit of the show. The way I put it to Dwaylen, and he 100% agreed with me. I said, these standard chants that we have on every show, even the indie shows that I've been to, and this is not just the NWF. You hear these at the NWF shows, but I've also heard them at the other indie shows that I've been to that are not Northern Wrestling Federation. I'll say not every match is awesome. Not every person deserves it. And not every moment is worthy of a holy crap. They're just not. And so these chants have been overused because I've seen the "this is awesome" chants, and I'm going, this match ain't that great. I have no idea what you're watching, or the "you deserve it." No, they don't. No, not every time. Somebody comes back, oh, they got a title. You deserve. No, they didn't. Not every time. In fact, won't you stop? Seriously. And and that's what I said. I love my American wrestling. I mean, I grew up watching American wrestling. These chants have to stop. And I'm not saying, well, maybe we need to do like, the French or the Europeans, but I'm just saying our chants that we see at all of our events have to stop. Honestly. That, and, sometimes you see the welcome back, welcome back. I saw the one doofus start that chant at the NWF show right in the middle of their Hall of Fame ceremony because it was King Titan. Man who's been a guest on the show before. He was actually doing the induction. Well, King Titan's been injured. Yeah, that's why he hasn't been wrestling. Well, he actually came back just to induct. Oh my God. Can't remember his name, but he was inducting, somebody into the NWF Hall of Fame. All of a sudden, you had this one doofus. All of a sudden, he starts trying to get a welcome back. Welcome back. It was like, that dude, that's not appropriate for this. This is an actual formal ceremony. What are you doing? Sit down and stop harassing the women. Seriously. But yeah, I just think the chance that we have in the American thing, those need to stop. I do get tired of hearing what. You also don't have to do that all the time because it does get old. And you see that really at the WWE shows because that's where it originated. I don't think Steve Austin meant for that, to be still going on 22 years later, 23, however many it is. I don't think he meant for that to happen, but it did. But, and last thing I want to talk about, there's some news that came out a couple days ago about Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. A couple things, actually. One, apparently he had a heart attack during the middle of his last match. You know why? Because he was 72 years old and shouldn't have been in there having a last match. He should have already been had because his last match was at WrestleMania against Shawn Michaels. That should have been his last match, but no, Ric Flair's horrible with money. So he had to come back just for the money. But the other thing came out that Ric Flair, and I saw him post something on social media where he's calling out a bar in Gainesville, Florida. And he said, I spent $1,500 at Piasano's stone-fired pizza to be disrespected more than I ever have in my entire life. Wow, that's saying a lot. After taking 20 pictures with customers and staff, I was asked to leave because of an issue I had with the kitchen manager taking too long in the bathroom. I would highly recommend that anyone who wants to enjoy a relaxing time in Gainesville at a nice restaurant to never visit this place. Woo. I don't feel like breaking the microphone, so I'm not going to do the full-on woo. But he's claiming, obviously, they're just being jerks to him, that they just kicked him out for no reason. Then the actual camera footage came out. Did he really expect in this day and age for there not to be camera when everybody is walking around with a camera in their hand that's built into their cell phone? Did he honestly expect that nobody was going to film this? I've seen the footage. Ric Flair ain't telling the truth, y'all. Ric Flair was being very, very belligerent with them. And by the way, he got mad because he said the manager took too long in the bathroom. What are you doing? Monitoring how long he's in the bathroom? Maybe the man had something going on that he had to be in the bathroom. But no, he was being kind of an ass to the staff there at this place in Gainesville. And they told him he was being cut off from alcohol. And you can tell when he's talking, he was already, pretty far gone. This is the same man that a few years ago, remember, he almost died, and the doctor told him stay away from alcohol because his bodily organs were shutting down because of all the alcohol he had drank, and he almost died. But here he is back at it again, and he's in there, he's slurring. He's like, look, I didn't cuss you, as he's cussing them. He's like, I never cussed you, whatever. And he's calling them some names I'm not going to repeat. But they said, you're cut off. Well, he starts calling the bartender name. He said, I put this restaurant over so many times. And I'm like, this is not a wrestling thing, man. But he's saying, he put them over so many times. And now he's not going to do that. And because they basically owed him because of all the times he put them over. And it's like, okay, first of all, we didn't ask you to put us over. Second of all, um, that does not entitle you to treat everybody here like they're beneath you. And that's what he was doing. And he told the head bartender to meet him in the parking lot. I'm saying now that would have ended, had that bartender gone out there, that would have probably ended badly. Ric Flair is in his mid 70s and he was drunk. He was not going to win that. But the bartender declined anyway. He said, I can't go anywhere. He said, I'm on the clock. And in other words, the bartender's not wanting to get fired, but the bartender's still doing his job because he cut him off. He did the right thing. He cut him off. He's like, we're not giving you any more alcohol. Treating us like that. He was offering a different bartender $1,000. He said, I'll tip you $1,000, if you tell him this and da da da. And, basically to be rude to the other bartender's coworker. I tip you $1,000. Now I'm kind of wondering, hey, do it, grab $1,000, I'll split it. That could be all right. Boom, $1,000. All right, here we're going to go split it now. Thank you very much, moron. But he's sitting there saying, I'll meet you, come meet me in the parking lot. And bartender said, no, if I had another guy, another patron said, I'll meet you. And I don't work here, so I don't have to worry about that. He said, I'll meet you right now. And this guy, he was getting pretty steamed because he saw the way Ric Flair was talking to people, talking to the staff at this restaurant. It was absolutely ridiculous, uncalled for. There was no reason for him to do that. And because they were cutting him off, and because he said, well, the manager's in the bathroom too long. Too long for what? Seriously. What was going on that the manager was in the bathroom too long? What was going on that you had to have the manager? And that's when he said he was going to blast the restaurant on social media, which he did. And I also looked at the Twitter X account for that restaurant where Ric Flair put this, because I actually screenshotted. Like I said, that's what I read it off of. Screenshot he posted. They haven't posted anything since 2021. I really don't think they care what he posts. They have not responded to it. Somebody claiming to be a manager there actually did respond, but they claim to be a manager, and people are actually calling this person out going, you're not a manager, shut up. But obviously this just happened a couple days ago. There's still more details because Ric Flair, of course, he goes on social media, and I'll say this is another interesting example of someone making a one-sided post on social media. I see it all the time, not just with wrestlers, but just people in general. They will automatically go on to social media, and this is when you got to put the whole thing. It says nobody with a blank, not one person blank. No, nobody's even asking, but somebody goes on social media and they put somebody on blast. They start saying, well, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And this person, they're a jerk and they're crazy. Saw it happen. Somebody in, I'll say Hopkinsville. I'll go ahead and say it, Hopkinsville. Somebody's claiming that her ex-husband is psycho and him and his dad are psychos and they had her committed and blah, blah, blah. And they pushed this divorce through when it shouldn't have happened and got custody of the kids. And I'm thinking, you're leaving out the part where you were pregnant with another man's child. Then you got pregnant with this other man's child while your now ex-husband was deployed, because did you forget that I worked there with your ex-husband? Kind of a coincidence. We were all from the same town, and yet we worked together in England. I think she forget, but she's not telling that part of the story. Same thing right here. Ric Flair said all this stuff, but he's leaving out the part where he was belligerent to them. He was threatening them. He was wanting to fight them in the parking lot. And same thing, one-sided. I get sick of that. I get very, very sick of that. That's why you don't see me posting things like that on Facebook, because, like that girl, I'm not going to give the other guy a chance to give his side, because they're not friends. I don't even think he has a Facebook anymore, to be honest with you. The guy, from Hopkinsville that I was talking about. But of course, she's not going to give him a chance to come on his side. And I thought about commenting, but I'm like, it's really not my business. But I didn't feel like starting anything. But it does make me mad, because she also did commit like the cardinal sin of military dependence, is she got pregnant while her husband was deployed. But and that's actually how they were able to put in it. Yeah, I knew way too much about that just because of the job that I happened to work in the same squadron with the guy. But I'm also seeing it with another certain person who is, they were addressed on my, not my last episode, maybe the one before that. Maybe it was my last episode. By the way, I did get somebody actually gave me a comment. They said they like Surly Steve, so maybe I could change my name to Surly Steve. I don't know. I don't see myself doing that all the time. Having, I'm not gonna call it a meltdown, but I was more than a little peeved about something, and so I just had to address it. I didn't call anybody out by name, and I'm not going to call the person out. It's the same person that I'm saying, who's trying to gain sympathy right now on social media. I see the person's post. I forgot I had the person followed a long time ago. I still see their posts, and I see the things that there's like they're trying to garner sympathy from people. Problem is, there's always going to be those who will always placate them without even knowing or even believing the entire story. They won't know the entire story. It's like, oh, you're just in the right. Yeah, you're just in the right. Have you heard the full story? Yes or no? Oh, so here is the full story. Well, I don't believe that. I have proof of it. I have video. Flair, there's video. I've seen it. I have audio. Hey, somebody, there's audio because the whole freaking world's heard it, and you're still trying to deny it. And we see this all the time. And then I know this is kind of a commentary on the world as a whole right now. It's not just wrestling, where people are telling, and this happened before social media, but social media I think has actually magnified it quite a bit. Where somebody is just saying, I'm gonna tell my story. I'm gonna put these people on blast. But it's one of the things where a lie will make its way around the world 3 times before the truth actually rears its head. And that's what's happening. He put this restaurant on blast, and then the actual footage came out. Hey, Rick, were you too drunk to remember that people have cameras? And like I said, we'll see in the coming, coming soon, what the backlash is going to be from this. I don't think it's going to be good. But that's all I got to say about that. One quick announcement, and I think everybody already knew this. There's not going to be a show next week. My wife and I, in fact, are a week from today, we are going to be celebrating our 25th anniversary, and we will not be home. We are going to be somewhere in the Caribbean on a great big floating something or another, pretty close to the Bermuda Triangle, I think. But I'm going to be spending some time with my wife. We have not been able to get away for something like this in a very long time. Those of you who have been married a while, it's important you do things like this, but we just haven't been able to. But she did tell me to leave your laptop at home. You're not doing any podcasts. And I said, okay. But I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't going to do any podcasts anyway, because I was not going to have any kind of schedule revolving around me doing a podcast. So I'm not going to bring my laptop. So if I am able to do any kind of podcast, it would have to be a very, very, very special emergency reason. I can't see this podcast having any kind of emergency like that. Um, I can't see my other podcasts because I don't cover necessarily newsworthy type things, but it would have to be something very personal that I would have to do any kind of like podcast, and I'd have to figure out how to do it without my laptop because I'm not taking it with me. But until I am able to come back again, it should be 2 weeks. We'll have to see what happens in wrestling. Maybe there'll be an update on everything going on with Ric Flair. Maybe there'll be an update on Asuka's injury. Maybe we'll know more about the King of the Ring, Queen of the Ring, because that's actually happening in about 3 weeks. It's going to be in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And maybe we'll just know more about what's happening in wrestling. I think it'd be kind of cool. But until we can actually speak again, my friends, I just do have to bid you farewell and God bless.